Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is That Side Character Chapter 16, and this one is titled Protective Kenma. It's okay. Thank you, he said, putting his hand on your arm to stop you. You can leave it there. Sure? You asked. He nodded. Okay, you smiled. He went back to playing his game, while you just sat back and looked at his face for a while. He's nice to look at, you thought, before looking back down at your phone again. The following day was Monday, Project Presentation Day. You were prepared this time and carried the cardboard diagram with pride. Kenma was holding on to a few other pieces, walking behind you while you chatted back to him. As you were rounding the front of the school, 5 guys on bikes came tearing in from the opposite direction and thought they could cut in front of you to get through the school gates first, but you were too preoccupied talking back to Kenma that you didn't see them, and you didn't stop. Kenma saw what was going to happen at the last minute and reached out to grab you, but he was just a little bit late, and the lead guy on his bike ran straight into you. You, cardboard diagram, guy and bike all went crashing to the ground. The other members of the biked-up gang somehow managed to avoid crashing into you, but one happened to smash his front wheel into your ankle, whacking it pretty hard. You had already gasped and screamed when you were collected by the first bike, but cried out again when your ankle got smashed, and Kenma put the project thing down to come to your aid. You okay, Yin? He asked, pulling you out of the rubble that consisted of bike pieces, limbs, and other bits and pieces. Your school shirt was ripped, and you had a serious graze down your left side, where you'd been scrubbed into the concrete, but he hadn't seen what had happened to your ankle because there was so much going on. What the hell? The first guy who had run into you yelled as he got up and dusted himself off. Who walks right into the path of oncoming bikes? Are you stupid? You looked up at the guy, tears brimming in your eyes as Kenma helped you up. I didn't see you, you said timidly, as you tried to put weight on your right foot but couldn't. Didn't see me? He scoffed. I'm on a bike, for God's sake. How can you not see a bike? Then he looked down at his mangled transport item. And look at it, he added with disgust. He pointed to the crumpled front wheel that had hit you, and you looked down sadly at it. I'm sorry, you said, sniffing and wiping your eyes. That's not going to cut it, he snapped angrily. Well, I don't know what else to do. You'll be paying for a new bike, and I'll be telling the principal that you ran into me, which you did. Oh, but I didn't. You hit me. She ran smack into me, didn't she, boys? He asked his fellow friends on their bikes, and they all nodded with evil smirks on their faces. Fresh tears brimmed along your lower lid as you tried to find the right words to say back. But suddenly, Kenma stepped in front of you, his face dark and threatening. His eyes were intense even when he wasn't angry, so although you couldn't see the look on his face because his back was now facing you, you could imagine just how pissed he looked. You know it was your fault, he said darkly to the guy who had run you over. The guy didn't know how to take this sudden dark character and backed away a little. Apologise, now, Kenma demanded. Don't get in people's way again, the guy stammered as he reached down and dragged his bike away from the two of you. The rest of the crew all slunk away, and Kenma stood there in a defensive stance in front of you until they'd moved on. Then he turned around to you. I'm sorry, I'm not much of a fighter, but I know a monster when I see one, and I wasn't going to let it win. He still didn't apologise though, he said sadly. You nodded. That's okay. Thanks though, you sniffed. Does your leg hurt? He asked, seeing that you were balancing on your left leg. Yeah, you nodded sadly. I'll take you to the nurse, he said. No, she'll just make fun of me, you replied sadly. I'll be okay. But your shirt. You looked down to see it was ripped open and showing your middle. Oh, you gasped with a mortified expression on your face. Here, he said, shrugging his jacket off his shoulders and placing it over your shoulders. Thank you, you said in a small voice, as you pulled it on and put the two sides together to cover your front. You looked down at the cardboard on the ground and picked it up, still balancing on one leg, then gave him a teary smile. I always practice hopping on one leg just in case I get into a car accident and have one leg amputated, or if I survive a shark attack and it took a leg, you said to him, half hopping, half limping with toe of your right shoe to the ground. Kenma walked slowly with you to your locker and helped you put your things away. Then you went with him to his locker, and then off to class you went together. You were at school quite early that morning, so he had you well and truly in your seat before anyone else turned up, and you waited until class started, and then the teacher called on you and Kenma to come forward and present. Everything ached as you stood up, and you did your best not to draw attention to yourself as you hobbled limp to the front of the room. Kenma was a little concerned for you, but didn't help too much, knowing that it would draw more attention to your plight, and the teacher would make a big spectacle of you if she found out what happened. Are you okay? He whispered to you when you got to the front of the classroom. You nodded at him. Now, Yin, the teacher said briskly. You're up first to talk. Please present your project. You nodded, and then gave a short description of what you and Kenma had done, but the teacher didn't seem too impressed and sat back in her chair with her arms crossed. And can you please explain the time period this occurred in? The teacher asked, asking a pointed question about the project. Yes, it was modern era, you replied. That actually had never been part of the project. It was only that a few pictures online had mentioned the era and you'd remembered it well enough to answer a question. Honestly, this teacher's just a beep. I'll just blank that one out. Next chapter, chapter 17, coming tomorrow. See you then.